Hello and welcome everybody to Baton Rouge Gallery's Artists in Residences. My name is Kelsey. I am your host today. Artists in Residences is a twice weekly broadcast where we check in with artists of all kinds. They have been gracious enough to invite you into their space because right now our gallery is still closed, so we can't have you in our space just yet. Soon though. Speaking of our space, I want to take a moment to thank Breck for being our partner since 1984 and allowing us the space to call City Park home. Of course, this broadcast, as well as everything else we do, is not possible without our donors and our members. So thank you so much to all of those folks. And if you would like to become a member or you'd like to donate to the gallery, you can check our website at batonrougegallery.org for more information. And we recently started monthly memberships that start as low as $5. So if you've ever wanted to be a member, but paying that yearly fee was a little tough and just not for you, there's new monthly option. So feel free to check that out. Without further ado, I'd like to talk about the artists that we're going to have on our broadcast today. Today we have Christopher Brumfield and Hye Yeon Nam. Both artists work in installation, site-specific work, and they deal with issues of memory, social commentary, and a little bit of political commentary while they're at it. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and bring on Christopher Brumfield and Hye Yeon Nam. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Pretty good.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much for being on. I know, first I want to ask you how teaching has been going. I know both of you are teachers. Christopher, you teach at Baton Rouge Community College, and Hye Yeon, you teach at LSU, Louisiana State University. What has this past semester been like for you, being primarily studio arts teachers? And feel free to either of you just hop in.
Yeah, at first it was challenging. It was so sudden, but I'm teaching a lot of digital technologies. So we use computers. So a lot of my students are already familiar with that. So it was not really big problem for my side. Yeah.
Christopher, what about you?
Well, my introduction to fine arts classes went okay. It was an easier transition. My ceramics classes, we really just transitioned to ceramics history for the most part. And I'm going to try to be a better online teacher the next time I have to do it. So learning, moving forward. I had about 60% of my students continually show up and do the online stuff, which I thought was really respectable. Probably more than that, actually, in the end. When I sent out like hysterical last week emails going, please turn your work in, just please.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been really an interesting through line for all of the episodes that I've been hosting anyway, especially these deep dive discussions. A lot of our artist members teach in some way at some place, or they have private lessons. So it's been a real big learning curve for everyone trying to navigate that space, because in some ways teaching a field like math can be reasonably adaptable to an online thing so long as people are paying attention, right? But in studio arts, that's such a hands-on, one-on-one situation that I just can't imagine trying to teach it online, especially when the first like half or the first third of your class was in person. So it's just been kind of bananas.
But
yeah,
surprisingly, sometimes the really quiet student and introvert students became really positive and outspoken. So what is surprising?
Yeah. I enjoyed I do an end of term paper with my art appreciation classes where they have to basically sum up the semester and talk about what they liked and what they didn't like. I transitioned to writing and an art project as my final away from a test a while ago, and really have seen some smart stuff. And these were the most introspective papers I ever got.
Wow.
I think the students are really engaged in what life is and aware of it in a way that maybe in normal times we're not. So
Yeah, I bet.
I was pleased with the papers very much. Just loved reading them. So
Great. So I'm going to go ahead and transition now and share my screen. I would like to show a little bit of both of your artworks. So I'll go alphabetical here, and I will start with Christopher Brumfield. Let me pull that up real quick. So I'm going to show a little bit of your work so the audience has a little bit of background. Let's get this in presentation mode. There we go. Tell us a little bit about what it is that you do.
So I am interested in the way people reveal themselves by the objects around them and the way we negotiate the kind of the world with our possessions, and also really interested in animals and because of some life situations that have happened to me, violence and what it does. And so ceramic objects are things that most people use every day and have for thousands and thousands of years, which is powerful and just amazing. And so I'm interested in ceramics as the medium because it talks to people. I love this one. It's so funny.
Me too. I'm just going to hover on this one for a minute.
So, but objects, we reveal ourselves by what's around us and what we like and what we choose to live with. And ceramics has an instant connection. And so I started using things like cassette tapes and making them in porcelain because there's two layer of connection there. And there's a very generational connection to people around my age with this form of expression that was mixtapes. And also this...
I remember making mixtapes.
Fun. And the idea of writing as informing your work. Every piece I write has a journal entry and a usually a poem associated with it, and sometimes a song. And because when I'm making them, I need to know all the backgrounds about my pieces as I'm making them. Like I form a story around them. And that's not necessarily something you see when I install them in the gallery, but for me, it helps me to make them. So like the giant man hanging on the wall, that's as tall as the gallery wall. And that's about the satyr Marsyas who challenged Apollo to a duel and got flayed alive for losing.
Wow. Now, our viewers may or may not be able to see the wall that he's hung on, depending on if they're watching this on cell phone or on their computer, but there's a lot of writing around this figure. Can you tell me what the writing is about?
The writing is a poem to Marsyas.
Okay.
And it basically says, you challenged the gods, you challenged everything. You challenged their kind of power, and they destroyed you for it. And to me, the poem was about that through history and how that happens through history, because if you really are a challenge to the people in power, they'll get rid of you. And that's what wars get fought and things like that. So it was basically about challenging power and challenging thought in a lot of ways. And just how things are always the same. We think that we live in these individual lives, but people fight these battles in all times and all places, trying to be loved and have enough to eat and be safe. I mean, these are universal. There's so little about humans that is different, and yet it's what we focus on.
Yeah.
We're all exactly the same, except for like tiny differences. And so
Hold that
Anyway.
thought a minute, because I have a follow-up question to that. Just as a reminder for our watching audience on both Facebook Live and YouTube, we welcome you to write in your comments or questions. I can see them here on the back end, and we can ask the audience in real time if you have any follow-up questions on what we're talking about or about their practice in general. I'm going to scoot over and show a little bit of work of Hye Yeon's. So let me pull that up real quick. And then while I'm doing that, Hye Yeon, if you can tell me a little bit about what it is that you do, and then we'll get into talking about comparing the work of both of you.
Sure.
Nice looking here. Hold on.
So I'm working a lot on multimedia and robotics and performance as well. And this is invisible stream that I made last year, 2 years ago. So this is like robotic form. And so I use a lot of, computational, computational system to spark a discussion. So about like sensitive racial stereotype issues. So when I came,
Oh, sorry. What I was going to say is that a lot of your work moves, and there's video of quite a bit of it on our website for those who want to see. It's at batonrougegallery.org under Hye Yeon's artist page. The restreaming of the video is a little chunky in this platform, so I really encourage people to go and check those out to get the full experience of what these works are like. Sorry, Hye Yeon, please continue.
Yeah, no problem. So when I came to Louisiana, like 5 or 6 years ago, I tried to find some online community, like a meetup. And it was anonymous, like online community. So I've heard some racial slurs and I was frustrated at first because I even don't know them and they just judged me before they talked to me based on my appearance. And I realized I can really change them, but I can create my artwork to share my feeling. So this one I used Twitter online platform. And I used certain keywords, racial slurs. And then they filter that and then they print that sentence, including slurs, racial slurs, on thermal paper, and robotic arm slice them and cut them and throw away.
Okay, hold on. Let me go back so that people can kind of see what, hang on here. I want to just take a moment to fixate on this pile here.
Yeah, so it's just constantly printing. It's real time. And the audience can read them and they can throw away or they can keep them. But I hope some of the audience can understand the victim's sensitivity and they can toward more understanding, not just stay in frustration.
So to clarify, what we're looking at here in this installation is you have created a filter that will monitor Twitter, or basically, and every time one of those keywords that you put in, which you chose racial slurs, comes up, it'll print out, and the scissors with the hand will cut it out, and it'll fall to the floor. So what you're seeing here is a pile of people being terrible to each other. It just grows and grows throughout the exhibition. So for as long as this exhibition's on view, that pile underneath this platform is going to grow. Yeah. Can you tell us, how long did it take for just what we're seeing here in the photo? How long was this set up and running for?
That was for 1 day. That was IJEA International Art Festival last year in Korea. And I installed that. That was produced by 1 day. Yeah, someone told me it looks like sad fortune cookie message.
Oh my God.
yeah.
I'm laughing, but like, it's one of those laughs where you're just like, you're not sure what exactly to do with that information because it's terrible. Okay. All right. So is this the same sort of thing that we're seeing happening here with this installation? Okay.
Yeah, not the same festival, but I dyed color because I was thinking of a blood, some kind of representation. Then I hung them on the wall.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you do other installation work, like what we're seeing here, and you also do outdoor sculptural work.
Yeah.
What
This
is
was, sorry.
what is the through line of the thing that connects one piece to the next in your
Mhm.
practice?
So when I came to America the first time, I felt like my surroundings completely changed. But one thing that didn't change was my body. So
Mm,
I have my body and I interact with others with my body, through my body. So this is the same. And everybody has a body. So when I use a body as a medium to communicate with, everybody immediately understood it.
mm.
So so you can see all over my work, you can find a lot of body parts. Sometimes it's moving, sometimes it's not, but most of like a motif from body movements, because that was some kind of a constant medium, even though I came from different culture, different country.
Right. So even these large scale
Yeah,
outdoor installations, a lot of them move, right?
yeah, they are kinetic.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm sure we will talk a little bit more about site and a little bit
Yes.
more about location, but that's also important.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do is just give the audience an idea of what it is that both of you do. And what I thought was really interesting is that both of you make work that responds to not just the physical space that we inhabit as a gallery viewer, but also the social space that we inhabit. And I wanted to know how both of you approach social interaction um, in your work before we go any further. That's a broad, weird question, so take it however you need to. And audience, please feel free to ask questions.
Chris, you can go ahead.
Okay. Um, so the first show I had, I was living in New Orleans when that Katrina thing happened. And the first show I had after that, I filled the gallery with the beautiful rubble that I'd found around the city and started a relationship with kind of terracotta remains. And at the opening, I put out paint and spray paint and Sharpies and markers. And the entire, like everyone who came to the show just like attacked it and tagged it and graffitied it and wrote all over it. And it was extremely cathartic. And it really started an interest to me is what happens when you give people permission in the gallery. I always encourage people to touch my stuff. I encourage them I give them spaces to write. I give them things to look through, things that make noises.
Super nervous.
What?
I said that makes me super nervous. Attending a gallery when you're allowed to touch stuff and it's ceramic work.
But that tension is one of the most important things, breaking that tension. And I believe in separating this preciousness of art from life. It's such a strange separation because children make art intuitively. We all make art, and the separation I find strange. So I enjoy the tension of having people interact with the work. And the table full of porcelain cassette tapes at the opening, there was always a crowd of people sorting them around and moving them around the table to read them. And as they moved them, they made this beautiful clinking sound that porcelain makes that can be a sound that implies danger because, oh my God, it's about to break. But so at the opening,
here, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But at the opening, it was this invitation to interact and this idea that a lot of folks have made one of these. A lot of folks have held one of these and they know how they feel. And when you pick them up and feel them and they're made out of porcelain, it's a different interaction with an object we know very well. That in retrospect has become really kind of precious and a strange cultural thing. And I went on Facebook and Instagram and asked people for titles of their favorite mixtapes. So most of those titles are collected from the internet. People responded and gave me their favorite titles, and then I wrote them on these cassettes. And it was truly just so much fun. And seeing people, the opening, finding their cassette tape and like, oh, this is the one I put in. So
that is fun.
Can I ask a question to Chris?
Yeah, yeah.
How could you encourage the audience to interact with that in the gallery? It sounded challenging.
Well, first he starts by bringing a bottle of Xanax to the gallery people who are going to be working with the stuff and letting people touch things. And then
that piece people just touched.
Did they know?
No. They just touched it. And I don't think people could resist it. And also at the opening, I was touching it and encouraging people to. But they touched it before I told them to. And literally digging through it. And so I like to encourage that. It is hard to encourage that. At the last show I had at Baton Rouge Gallery, I put these giant mirrors on the wall and I put a tube of blue lipstick out. And I wanted folks to write on the mirrors, and didn't say that, but then it happened. And then it really happened. And then all the lipstick was gone. And so I think if you give people a window, sometimes they'll jump through it. So hopefully you're on the first floor when you do that.
Did you leave a note? Please do this, or no?
For the last show with the lipstick on the mirror, I think that once one person broke that seal, everyone else sort of understood, I see someone doing it and I see the gallery director right there not yelling at them, so this must be a part of the installation, right? On the days where it wasn't the opening Wednesday, on just a regular, let's say Friday afternoon, when small groups of people would walk through, normally whoever's at the gallery, talks to them a little bit about the work as they're walking through. And we would let people know, if there's lipstick left, go ahead and write something. It was a funny kind of nervousness with us as a staff because, people get married at the gallery. I was a little worried about what John Q. Public was going to draw on this mirror, but it ended up being, great. It was really great. Now, Hye Yeon.
Yeah.
Oh man, that made us nervous. So Hye Yeon, your work is kinetic, which means it moves, right? I have a specific question about how people interact with one piece. Let me get it pulled up here. Hold on one second. Hang on here. This piece. I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to know how did people interact with this piece?
So,
no, good. Tell me first, and then I'll have a follow-up question.
So this is a Please Smile. That's the reason why I asked Chris how you encourage the people to interact with it, because this one is interactive installation. The audience should smile, and the scary skeleton wave at you. But sometimes people don't know they're supposed to smile, which is unusual in front of artwork. So the title is Please Smile. We placed a really big title on the wall, and still they didn't understand. But we had some volunteer, they explained that in the festival. So this one also similar concept behind. Since I came from different culture, so even though I look different, but if you smile, which is a very nice gesture, and the skeleton arms wave at you, so this is like a feeling of the importance of friendliness behind.
Oh, wow. Did you ever notice anyone being startled by these skeleton hands waving at them unexpectedly?
When I had exhibition in Brazil, and also I realized they are really friendly, and then this is a hand, and they try to like shake hands or touch hands, and they will like keep talking like, you can do that, sorry. And then we made a tape in front of them, like don't go above this line. But it was really fun. to watch that.
And then what about this one? Because you see a person here, there's these foot pedals that maybe you can see better in this photo. And these little feet structures are made to move. And this looks to be out in a public space.
Yeah.
How do people generally act with your work in public?
So this is in the community park, and there is no like a volunteer to explain that. So we just left it over there.
You just left it.
Yeah, so we had actually a few concerns. One is a safety issue because this is metal. And the other one was vandalism issue. There are many issues, but there was a security camera, so there was not a problem. And also safety issue, we left some warning sign next to. So especially this is kinetic works, and I didn't want to hurt anybody, especially for children, because you can really
you don't
control.
want to like pinching your fingers in there or anything, you know. I can't imagine just leaving a sculpture in a park. How hilarious.
Yeah. And also we have a lot of unexpected feedback, like, is this for workout? Because this is in the middle of the park.
Maybe.
But whole meaning behind the site is very important for this piece. This was Yongsan Family Park in Korea, and it was a commission. And the site was once occupied by Japan, and now it's next to U.S. Army place. So it went through a lot of other countries. So I wanted to contain that historical meaning behind this work. So not just one footstep. So we walk forward together. So that was behind. And then I just didn't want to make fixed, stay still sculpture. I just wanted to involve interactions with it. Because I think the interaction is very democratic tool. So it's not just you are watching sculpture, you are part of a sculpture. And you can activate it, you can initiate it, you can work with it. So that's the whole idea behind.
Yeah. And Christopher, you also have outdoor site-specific work that I am trying frantically to pull up as fast as I can here. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so similar question to Hye Yeon. How do people interact with these things when they're just out in the wild? I mean, these gnomes kind of take on a personality of themselves. The water's going to do whatever the water wants to do. What is your artistic life like when making an installation like this? Let me zoom in a little bit.
That was out at Bywater Point, or what they call the end of the world now, in the Bywater neighborhood. And I brought them in I hiked them down to the river and installed them and photographed them, and then installed them going up the levee and going into New Orleans, and photographed the whole process. And the idea was kind of a gnome invasion of New Orleans, because I felt like New Orleans was getting too tasteful after Katrina with all the highfalutin art. So I decided a gnome brigade was what was needed to level the playing field. So there's a little bit of humor in it, and there's a little bit of poking fun at the seriousness, like an art gallery, the pretentiousness of it that can happen when it's just a shop. You know, you happen to sell art instead of tomatoes, but it's just a shop. And so part of it is me kind of grounding that. And now these gnomes live in like 14 countries, and I'm putting together a small book about their adventures. And so they kind of took on a life of their own. And this was, so I call it going gnoming. It's kind of how I relax. I take a backpack and get on my bike and go out and take pictures. And it's fun because it's a way to focus attention in different points of the environment. So there's that.
Yeah. One last thing I want to ask is about this installation here with these trays and porcelain figures on the tray. This was your last exhibition, Christopher, at Baton Rouge Gallery. And what actually made me think of you for social practice was this installation piece and the meaning behind it. Would you briefly explain it?
So I did. It's about a 16-foot long table covered in blue gingham, and I was trying to reference the picnics of my childhood down at the pool, where there's a big bucket of potato salad and there's lots of desserts, and then there's grills going, and flesh is being cooked and consumed in large quantities. And I've been a vegetarian since the early 90s and have started to see what we consume is very revealing about us. And so everything from cats and tigers being killed to use their bones for medicinal purposes. And on each plate, each cafeteria tray is an animal that humans eat. And if you notice in the first tray on the right, there's 2 humans, because humans eat humans as well. So it's this idea of what exactly are we consuming and plating up, and also making these out of these porcelain tchotchkes that everybody's seen. They're very famous in households in America. So it was, again, trying to make that little cassette tape connection. This idea that if I can get you connect to an object because it's been in your environment before, then possibly you connect to the piece more. So it's kind of like a picnic of these are all the things that we kill and eat.
Wow. So. Thank you. All right. So last question for both of you. I'd really like to know, in making work that is imbued with the type of social commentary, is the goal of your work to bring attention to the issue, to change hearts and minds, to, start a conversation, to start an argument? What is the base intention behind making work that is about aspects of society?
Yeah, that's what I have been thinking for a long time. I think this is the artist's responsibility. So we can really control the audience reaction. What they learn is actually their own decision and choice. But as artists, I believe we can convey some kind of message, and we can make the world better some way. That's what I think. And I just share what I feel like important issue in society.
Mm-hmm. How about you?
First off, I love that smile piece so much. It makes me so happy.
Let me pull it up. Hold on, so people know what we're talking about.
It's just wonderful. Given me a lot to think about. For me, I just want folks to kind of consciously, not consciously, but when I engage folks, I'd like them to think about the things that I'm talking about. Like the fact that a package of pork chops at the store is not just dinner. It was an animal. It was actually an animal that loved its children, that cried when they were taken away. So for me, there's very kind of, I do want you to think about it. I'm not trying to change anyone's minds. But it basically comes down to, we just need more love and more compassion. And that's the deal. Like, love one another, be compassionate, be understanding, try to be better. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I like that. All right. Well, and do either of you have any last words before we cut the broadcast today?
Before we end, I have a quick question for Chris about the last piece. So it's really interesting, the dinner utensil with the ceramic piece on top. But the medium-wise, have you thought of other edible materials, or ask audience to eat physically? I'm just curious.
So yes, and I've thought about that a lot. And the idea of curating food has been used by artists really, really well in specifically in conceptual art, but in restaurants for thousands of years. And it's its own art form. So that's something that's a big one that I do want to face, but I'm not sure how. So yes, it's something I've thought about and would love to continue. But I don't know yet. So I wanted to ask you about the you have this in your work, this movement, this idea of the hands and the feet and like our movement as humans. And I feel like you're trying to connect directly to something that we can like latch onto so quickly. Why do you use those specific parts of the body like that?
Yeah, so those are kind of robotic movements. They a lot like us. They resemble us. They resemble us. So when we see their movements, immediately we understand the process. So I adopt a lot from body movements. Yeah.
Wow. They're
so
interesting.
Well, you had mentioned earlier, Hye Yeon, the kind of universality of the human body, especially as you travel this work around the world. I think there's something that's broadly, immediately connectable with something that we inhabit, right? I think that there's a similar feeling, depending on your culture, of course, with some of Christopher's work, like, for example, that big picnic table. Those of us who have spent enough time in America will be familiar with what a picnic table or even those lunch trays look like. That's not necessarily a universal experience, but it is something, from a cultural standpoint that I could pick up right away and then start digging into, okay, so why is there a cat on here? Why is there a lady on here? You know what I mean? I think that that's also another thing that kind of connects the two of you and the content of your work is how there are some symbols within each installation that you seem to intentionally want to broadcast to a wide audience to draw them into it so that they start asking, what is this and why is this? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Awesome. All right. Well, I really want to thank both of you for coming on today. Let me go ahead and throw up places where people can find you. Chris, your work is on our website, obviously, batonrougegallery.org, but you also have your own website for people to view the work, the installations, which is christophersblues.com. Did I spell that right, I hope?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Awesome. And then on Instagram as well, Christopher's Blue, singular, right? Not plural?
Singular.
Fantastic. All right. And then Hye Yeon, obviously your work is on our website as well, batonrougegallery.org. Is there any other place online where people can see your work?
Instagram, hye.yeon.nam.
So hye.yeon.nam. All right, I'm going to follow you on Instagram now. I'm already following Christopher, so we're good to go there. All right, thank you both so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, have a good day.
You too. All right. Bye.
All right, so that has been our episode today of Artist in Residences. I keep forgetting to pluralize it because they're in more than one house. Sorry about that. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. We really appreciate it. If you would like to view any of these videos in the series, they live on our website. They also live on our YouTube page and our Facebook. So BR Gallery, BatonRougeGallery.org. You can look at past episodes there as well. And remember, if you're interested in supporting the gallery and supporting conversations like this, please visit our website at BatonRougeGallery.org. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you Friday.